Oh my Lanta. Bleach's 1,000-year blood war is a behemoth of an arc that begins with a bang. After 10 long years, Bleach fans have been treated with the anime's return, now looking and sounding better than ever. However, for today's video, I'm going to be talking mainly about the manga. I have seen the first 7 episodes as of the recording of this video, and I can confirm that the adaptation is doing an incredible job so far. So if you are an anime-only viewer, this is your official spoiler warning. Bookmark this video and come back after watching, I'm guessing episode 13. I'm not really sure, I can't see into the future. However, for those reading along with me, I'm going to be talking about chapters 480 to 540, which is the beginning of volume 55 and the very end of volume 60. So are we all on the same page now? Alright, good. Let's do this. Oh boy, okay, so where do I even begin? I guess I'm going to start by saying that I'm really happy to see that the Quincy's are going to be playing a major role in this arc. They have always felt like a very underutilized aspect of the story up until now. After 1,000 years, the king of the Quincy's has returned to unleash his will upon both Hollows and Soul Reapers. And I gotta say, I find it very interesting that for an aggressive, warmongering dictator, Yhwach sure does dislike conflict quite a lot. We don't really get into his origins all that much during this portion of the arc, so as we move further, I'm looking forward to learning why he is so against conflict, even though he's the one that's causing a lot of it right now. This arc actually gets going a lot faster than I expected it to. Like, literally all it takes is one chapter before the bad guys show up and we have Ichigo already fighting them. And then right from there, we immediately have Nell showing back up and asking Ichigo to come to Huokamundo to help save them from some trouble. I really enjoyed this little portion where Ichigo and the friends go to Huokamundo. It somehow feels very nostalgic, even though it really wasn't all that long ago since we were last here. But we immediately get established how much more dangerous the Quincy's are because they're here enslaving the Arrancar, who were literally the main villains just like an arc or two ago. And I think that Ichigo's fight against Ichigo'S was a really good one to have here. It gave Kubo the opportunity to remind us just how insanely powerful the Quincy's really are. We get to show off some of the abilities that the Quincy's have, like Blue to Vein for strong healing and damage resistance, their ability to absorb all kinds of Reshi, crazy looking transformations, and of course, their ability to steal Bankais. However, Ichigo being Ichigo makes Ichigo'S look like a weakling because, you know, Ichigo is the main character. We gotta have him do some cool stuff. But this all happens at the exact same time that Yhwach summons his elite group of soldiers, the Stern Ritter, to march in an invasion against Soul Society. And I will say, the Stern Ritter are a odd bunch of villains. I think the theme that's going on here is that they're supposed to be based off the alphabet, so there's at least 26 of them, maybe more. Some of them are awesome, having memorable designs and personalities like Asnot and Ichigo'S. Most of them, though, they're pretty forgettable. Like, a lot of the designs are either just overly goofy or just completely unremarkable. And heck, a few of them even get killed off screen. I'm looking at you, Kenpachi. And you know what? I'm really not all that upset about that right now. We're still very early in the arc, plus the main focus is to give Yhwach a strong first impression, and boy, does he do that. Bankai, Zanka no touch. I may not have the years of anticipation for this moment that a lot of you had, but that really didn't stop me from leaping out of my chair with excitement when Yamamoto stepped up to battle Yhwach. Everything about this fight was turned up to 11. I loved how serious Yama was from the very beginning. Yhwach seems to be trying to have some fun with it and make some witty banter. Yamamoto's just like, nah, screw you, I'm gonna use my Bankai. And his Bankai does not disappoint. I love how Yamamoto literally embodies the power of the sun in his sword. And each of the different forms was also really interesting. East, west, south, and north were all awesome. Especially south. It's pretty morbid to see somebody like Yamamoto raise the dead to fight for him. And this really fits perfectly with what we've begun to learn about the original Gotei 13 and how much more brutal and savage they kind of were in the way they fought. And this is especially true for another founding member that we get to learn a little bit more about later, but I'm going to save that for when the time is appropriate. But just because we have Yamamoto being a badass does not mean everything is all hunky-dory. Turns out this was not the real Yuha at all. In fact, we learned that the real Yuha was off having a nice little chat with dear old Aizen. Speaking of which, I really liked how in the anime we actually get this scene expanded. In the manga, it's kind of just mentioned offhand that, oh yeah, I was off talking to Aizen and now I'm here. Whereas in the anime, we actually get to see the meeting between these two guys and have their talking back and forth for a little while. And now that we have Aizen's reintroduction to the story, I'm making a prediction right now that at some point, the Soul Reapers are going to have to team up with Aizen in order to stop the Quincy's. It should be fun to see if I'm right or wrong, but please don't spoil it in the comments. But yeah, so we got Yamamoto fighting the real Yuha, and it goes south really quickly as he steals his Bankai and immediately dispatches him with ease. This was such a brutal scene that precedes Ichigo's arrival at the Soul Society, which was a little too late, sadly, but it's fine because it's time for some truth bombs. Even though Ichigo really isn't a match for Yuha just yet, we do get to see Ichigo utilize some Quincy techniques. And this is where everything really starts to tie together and just makes so much more sense. Throughout this whole series, it's the way Ichigo's powers have worked have always been a little weird and different from everybody else's. Now for those paying attention, it should have been pretty obvious that Ichigo was going to have Quincy powers, but it is nice to actually have like a concrete confirmation of that. So not only does Ichigo have the powers of a Hollow and a Soul Reaper, but because he's also part Quincy, he gets access to some of their abilities like Blue Vein and Absorbent Reshi. Like now, Ichigo's apparent overpoweredness and plot armor actually has a valid explanation built into the story. And for the record, I didn't really have an issue of all that. I did enjoy Ichigo just being a complete badass. I'm just saying it's nice to actually have some information. But like I said, Ichigo is still no match for Yuha and his other Quincy's, and thus his Zanpakuto is broken. Interestingly, the Quincy's can't stick around any longer than they already have. They say they have to go before Squad Zero shows up, but this happens to coincide with some of their shadows disappearing. Like, that's all weird. I don't know if that has something to do with Squad Zero or if it's just some weird connection that exists between the Quincy's and Shadows. I'm not really sure why that would be, though. But in the end, Soul Society does remain, but the damage has already been done. The post-invasion recovery begins, but it's not a pretty sight. Yamamoto and many other Soul Reapers are dead. Byakuya has his Bankai stolen and is left nearly dead. Renji and Uriel are also badly injured and almost dead. Toshiro, Komamura, and Suifan have their Bankai stolen. And like I mentioned earlier, Ichigo's sword has been broken. Really, the only saving grace at the moment is the fact that Zero Squad, aka the Royal Palace Guards, descend down from the Ryoku to stabilize things. Now, I think these guys were mentioned at some point earlier in the story, but I honestly don't remember when that was. And it's crazy to think that there's this whole other squad that is composed of like people that are as strong, if not stronger than Yamamoto, just waiting for things to get extra bad. Like, they didn't even take action when the Central 46 were killed by Aizen or after the first invasion of the Quincy's. And I get it, they had to sit around and, make sure that the Soul King was protected. Oh, which, I don't think I mentioned the Soul King in my last Around Card video, but yeah, there's a Soul King that rules over everything. It's kind of a big deal. And along with that, we do get a lot of shakeups happening because of all the things that have happened. Sunsui gets named the new Captain General of Squad 1. Ichigo, Renji, Rukia, and Byakuya get taken to the Ryoku by Zero Squad for healing. And it's here that we get Renji and Ichigo going through some additional steps to improve their health and get a little bit stronger, and also have their Zanpakuto repaired by the creator of all of these swords, Oetsu. And like, my god, the amount of just world building lore drops that we get here in the Ryoku is kind of wild. What's important for now, though, is that Ichigo's desire to have his sword fixed is rejected. Apparently, he needs to learn the full truth behind his origin before he can proceed any further. Which means it's time for Ichigo to head back home to have a talk with good old Daddy Ishin. But before we get to that, there is something I really want to talk about that is developing inside of Soul Society. So Sunsui's first act as Captain General is to get approval for Kenpachi to receive additional training. Now, supposedly they stopped giving him any training because he'd get too strong to control. Now, I don't want to rub salt in the wound or anything, but yeah, that's kind of biting you guys in the butt right about now. But interestingly, Shunsui tasks Unohana with teaching Kenpachi. And this is where we get a big bomb drop that Unohana is actually one of the original 13 squad captains and holds the title of the first Kenpachi, the first captain of Squad 11, which means it's time for a little Kenpachi versus Kenpachi throwdown. And I must say, as a self-identified Zaraki Kenpachi fanboy, let me just say that this whole scene was my everything. Although I will admit, I had to read through it a second time because it was a little confusing on the first go around, but I think I got the gist of it now. So power scaling wise, Kenpachi has always been a very weird person. Losing to Soul Society Ichigo, but beating Noitora and stuff like that. But now everything just makes so much more sense. We learned that at some point, Kenpachi unconsciously put a seal on himself that made it so that his power would always be limited to the point where he's always on even footing with his opponents. Which is a massive disservice because he is apparently one of the most gifted and naturally talented Soul Reapers to ever exist, I think. And we kind of see this from the point of view of a younger Unohana from the days where she was part of the original Gote 13, who were a lot more violent and bloodlusted. You know, it's actually kind of blowing my mind the way that throughout this whole series, it's always been kind of teased or hinted at that the kind, sweet Unohana had a darker side to her. And now we finally get to see the unleashed. And can I just say, her Bankai? Oh my god, like what the hell even is that? God, that is going to look so good when it gets animated. Or at least I hope it does. If you're from the future, please let me know if her Bankai was awesome in the anime. I really enjoyed so many aspects of this battle. The way we see Unohana and Kenpachi's first encounter, and the way that parallels to what is happening now in the present. My favorite moment though, has to be at the very end. This panel right here, where Kenpachi learns the name of his Zanpakuto. Because you know that means shit is about to pop off. But now, it's time to return to our regular scheduled programming consisting of tragic flashbacks for the main character. It's been a long time coming, but we finally got the backstory of Ichigo's parents. Once upon a time, the captain of Squad 10 was a man named Ishin Shiba. Wait, hold up. Shiba, not Kurosaki? So if Ishin is a Shiba, then that would mean that Ganju is actually Ichigo's cousin, right? If so, that's actually pretty funny. First off, Masaki Kurosaki is such a sweetheart. She's unlike any of the other Quincy's that we've met so far, and I find it quite believable how she could be Ichigo's mother. It was neat to see how Aizen's experiments of hollows is what caused Masaki and Ishin to first meet together. You know, and speaking of that, we do learn that apparently this hollow named White was the first one ever created using a Soul Reaper's soul, I guess. And it's also just kind of blowing my mind because like, oh, so now this spirit that's been inside of Ichigo this whole time is actually a hollow that was created by Aizen and got transferred to Ichigo through an infection that his mother got. Like I said, it's all coming together. Like we even get an explanation of how Masaki was killed by Grand Fisher. So like technically Grand Fisher did kill Masaki, but like in actuality, the blame should be put on Yuha. Because it was at this time that Yuha was first coming back into power and he decided to make a grand cleansing of the Quincy bloodline. And so he did this by taking the powers away from those he saw as unfit, like Masaki, who had hollow in her blood, and Uriel's mother, who was actually a half-blood. But now that all of this has been revealed to Ichigo, it is time for him to return back to the Ryoku to get his Zanpakuto fixed. But of course, Kubo isn't done at dropping bombshells just yet. Because it's at this moment that we learn that the spirit of Zangetsu that we've been seeing throughout the entire story isn't really Zangetsu. No, this is actually a piece of young Yuha, a remnant of Ichigo's Quincy heritage that has been inside of him this whole time. Like a total mind-blown moment here. I guess there is some resemblance between Zangetsu and Yuha when you look at them side by side, but honestly I really didn't think about it too much. Like, let's be honest here, this series has enough tall dudes with black flowing hair. Kubo he ain't done yet, because in chapter 537, we actually get a scene where Uriel Ishida arrives at Yuha's palace to join the Stern Ritter? I'm sorry, but what? I'm guessing this could be some kind of ploy to getting close to Yuha and find a way to undermine him from the inside? Or maybe I've just completely misunderstood Uriel's character up until now. I guess I'm just gonna have to keep reading to find out. Okay, so these volumes were pretty crazy. The majority of it really was just setup for what's gonna happen in the rest of the arc, but I consider it to be the good kind of setup. We finally got confirmation of some of the more mysterious aspects surrounding Ichigo and Kenpachi. We finally got to see Isshin and Kasami interact with each other. The Quincy's have finally stepped out of the shadows and are now the main driving force of the narrative. There was some talk earlier about why are the Quincy's and Soul Reapers enemies when they both fight against Hollows. And it was kind of just written off as, well, oh, they just disagree on things and that's why they can never be allies. But I do hope that we do get some explanation for the motivations that Yuha and the Quincy's have. Like, why are the Quincy's so gung-ho on killing Hollows, knowing that unbalance is going to cause destruction to Soul Society in the mortal realm? We did get quite a few awesome battles during this section, including Yamamoto versus Yuha, Ichigo versus Quilligiopi, and Unohana versus Kenpachi. Plus, the anime has been killer so far. Every week when an episode drops, it is definitely the highlight of my week. I'm really enjoying Thousand Year Blood War so far, and I'm excited to see how these recent revelations are going to affect everything going forward. If you want to see my thoughts on the rest of the arc, be sure to subscribe and stick around because these videos should be coming out soon. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for watching and have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.